Well, howdy friends, Brian Flechsig of Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, and welcome back to another episode in our fly casting series. As always friends, we appreciate you being here. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Hit that like button, that just makes us feel good, and always stay tuned because we've always got a lot of content coming your way. And we especially appreciate the support of Mad River Outfitters. We don't have sponsors on our channel, so it's with your support that allows us to make these videos, and we really appreciate that as well. I wanted to take just a few minutes today and kind of introduce a concept in fly casting. This goes back to a Q&A video, which I'm sure is linked right there. And they were good questions about casting, and we answered the questions in the studio. If you don't see the link right there, it's down below me for sure. Addressing a fly casting question in the studio is kind of challenging, and I think we promised those two folks that we would eventually get out on the water and show this. But it was basically about short casting, okay? And the question was, how does your stroke change if you're making very short fly casts versus medium fly casts versus long fly casts? And basically the answer is that your cast doesn't really change, okay? The basic foundation of the stroke doesn't change. In fact, in a video that we did with Flip Palette a while back, which is of course where we've learned most of what we teach you, Flip mentioned that your casting stroke does not change, okay? And at one point he was talking about the double haul, and he was talking about the fact that your casting stroke doesn't change. It's just that the double haul is added, and that changes the speed. That tells the cast how fast to get to the target. And of course there's our airplane, which every time we go to film, there'll probably be some black Huey helicopters show up here shortly. Some F-15 fighter jets should fly over at some point. So the casting stroke, no matter what distance you're casting, doesn't really ever change. In several videos, and you can go back and watch our beginning casting, you can go back and watch this entire series, and we've talked about two concepts. First and foremost, we've talked about the casting stroke being from approximately 10 o'clock on the clock face to approximately 1 o'clock on the clock face. That's where the meat and potatoes of the loop formation occurs. As I'm facing you here, yes, it is reversed. If I do this, and you're looking at the clock like this, if you're a right-handed caster, the clock is always going to be off of your right side. So I get the cast moving, of course that's step one. I bring it to that 10 o'clock position, to the 1 o'clock position, and there is my upside down right triangle, okay? At the 10 o'clock position on that clock face, going clockwise, the rod is one leg of that upside down right triangle. At the 1 o'clock position, it's the other leg of that upside down right triangle. My elbow, of course, is the tip of the upside down right triangle, and my rod tip draws the base of it. The rod tip travels in a straight line between that 10 and 1 o'clock position. So it's a 90-degree stroke that actually forms the loop, okay? And if you can keep that, as you go beyond 90 degrees, that loop opens up. It's really, really simple. And what Lefty was talking about when he said clocks are for telling time and throw the clock in the river, the important thing is to understand that 90 degrees, okay? And you can take that 90 degrees and bring it down to here, okay? You can take that 90 degrees and you can take it to here, but the important thing is understanding that 90-degree stroke that forms that loop and the straight line path that the rod tip has to travel in. So Lefty was right, but I still like that analogy that allows you to see literally on a clock face that shaded area that's probably right here on the clock face, that is in fact 90 degrees. So back to the question, the Q&A question, how does your cast change when you're making short casts? Well, it really doesn't, okay? That 90-degree stroke stays the same, but here's a concept that I want you to think about that I think will help you, is for a very short cast, let's just say that your rod tip actually, on the particular clock face, let's just say that your rod tip actually touches the number 10 and it actually touches the number 1, okay? On a very short fly cast, imagine this, your clock is gonna be very small. Your rod tip is gonna touch the number 10, the rod tip is gonna travel in a straight line to the number 1 on that clock face, and it's a very small clock, okay? Very small clock, and then I'm gonna lower the rod down to fishing position. As you start to lengthen your cast, I want you to think about this. Again, concept here. The clock face gets bigger. Your casting stroke really doesn't change, but the distance that the rod will travel to get from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock on the clock face is gonna change because your clock face gets bigger as your cast gets longer. That 90 degrees doesn't change, okay? The amount that you move the rod to get the line moving may change, okay? I may have to move it farther. I may have to reach out farther to get that line moving. And then 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, I may relax my wrist, which you should going back. And then again, I'm gonna bring it back up. And then 1 o'clock to 10 o'clock moving forward. So if I'm making a really long cast, okay, that clock might be really big. I'm going here to here. We just went from a clock that's 12 or 14 inches to a clock that's 3 or 4 foot, okay? But the meat and potatoes of your cast, the loop formation, that 90 degrees really never changes. That right upside down right triangle needs to be in there. You may just have to do a little bit more to form that. So the other thing that will change is the timing, okay? A very short cast is gonna be very fast, okay? We get it moving, boom, boom. There's a certain rhythm to that. Again, I'm touching the number 10, I'm touching the number 1. It's a very small clock face, and it's a very fast rhythm. If we were using a metronome, like they did in A River Runs Through It to learn how to cast, because there is a rhythm to a fly cast, that metronome would be set very low and it would be moving very fast. Boom, 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 okay? As we let out line, the clock face gets bigger, and that we're gonna move that metronome up, and that tempo is gonna become slower, okay? We're gonna go bigger clock face, boom, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, okay? If we make a really long cast, the clock face gets even bigger, 1 1,001, 1 1,002, 1 1,001, 1 1,002, and you all understand that it just takes longer for that line to straighten out. Remember, if it doesn't straighten out behind you, it's not gonna straighten out in front of you. So it's just, I think, kind of a really cool concept of literally touching the number 10, touching the number 1 on that clock face. And based on the length of your cast, that's gonna dictate the size of your clock. That right angle still stays there. The rod tip must travel in a straight line. It's just your rhythm's gonna change, and how much setup you have to do as far as getting the line moving, and as far as how much you need to break your wrist behind you. In some cases, if I'm making a really long cast with a really heavy fly, I may again break my wrist and start my cast from basically parallel. I start my cast from way down here, form the loop, start my cast from way back there, form the loop, But what forms that loop is that right angle, and that right angle never changes. So think about that. Think about the size of your clock, and then think about the timing, and realize that your cast, your stroke doesn't ever change. You shouldn't ever move your elbow. Oh, one final thing I wanted to mention. If you're making that super short cast and that clock face 12 or 14 inches, it's a very small clock. Your thumb, in this case, your thumb is probably only going to travel about 2 or 3 inches. Remember that we want to keep my fulcrum point, my elbow, as stationary as possible. So on a very short cast, my thumb may only literally move 2 to 3 inches. As the clock face gets bigger, my thumb will also start to move a little bit further, but it's still not going far at all, okay? It doesn't take much movement of that thumb to get that rod to travel between that 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock position. So here's a longer cast. Now my clock face has just gotten bigger. I'm touching 10, I'm touching the number 1 on the clock face, and during, again, that loop formation, my thumb doesn't travel far at all. And I got news for you. Your thumb plays an integral role in fly casting. Your thumb is way more important than your arm and your shoulder. Your thumb tells the rod tip where to go. And if your thumb is flying all over the place and flopping all over the place, so is your rod tip. And it's rod tip control that allows it to travel in a straight line. And it's rod tip control that gives you accuracy. So remember, it's all about your thumb. And make sure your thumb's at the end of the cork grip, not back here. All right? So there you go, friends. Again, a pretty cool concept. I think it'll help you out. Again, that goes back to our Q&A video that we did in the studio, but I wanted to make sure that we got to that this season and address that subject here in the field. So as always, thanks for watching. We appreciate you being here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned. Hop on over to madriveroutfitters.com and show some support. We really appreciate it. And it's always needed. So stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming at you, and I've got some concepts in fly casting coming your way over the next couple of months, summer of 2022 here, that I really think are going to blow your mind. So stay tuned.